Welcome back to Fast Money. It is no secret that the crypto craze has taken the world, and for this matter, this show, by storm. But as Bitcoin and Wall Street collide, one question remains on many investors' minds. What exactly is Bitcoin? For more on that, let's bring in CFTC Chairman Chris Giancarlo. He joins us from the Milken Conference in Los Angeles. Chris, welcome to the show. And we just want to start off with the million-dollar question, because I think that there is a real debate, even amongst Bitcoin enthusiasts. What is Bitcoin? Is it digital gold? Is it a currency? Is it a security? Could it be all of the above? What do you think?
Well, it's a great debate, Melissa. And a lot of people are looking at it from so many different angles. And we at the CFTC have been looking at it for a number of years now. You know, the statutes under which we operate were written, in our case, in 1935, and with the SEC in 1933 and 34. And it's often hard to look at those statutes and find out where something as new and innovative as Bitcoin and many of the other cryptocurrencies, where do they fall into a regulatory regime that was written decades ago? So in the case of the CFTC, we see elements of commodities in it that are subject to our regulation, but depending on which regulatory regime you're looking at, it has different aspects of all of that. In our case, though, we have seen the licensing and the operation of Bitcoin futures contracts, which are cash-settled contracts on Bitcoin operated by our two large exchanges, the CME, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and the CBOE, and those contracts are working quite well.
You have said in the past, Chris, that you believe Bitcoin operates very much or acts very much like a commodity in the context of gold. I mean, do you see similarities where you say, you know, right now, at least in its early stage, it does look like X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, well, I think there are certainly aspects of this that you might call a virtual asset like gold, only it's virtual, it's digital. But it is an asset that many find worthy of holding for a long period of time, and that have aspects to it that might not be ideal as a medium of exchange, but might be more suitable as a long-term buy and hold strategy. But the truth of the matter is that Bitcoin and a lot of its other virtual currency counterparts really have elements of all of the different asset classes, whether a medium payment, whether a long-term asset. And so as a world and as regulators, we're coming to grips with this just now in real time, and it's complicated, and I don't see it being resolved anytime soon.
Are you worried that you or any of the other regulators out there, including the Securities and Exchange Commission, might be overzealous in regulating Bitcoin, and in doing that will stifle the innovation that can come with Bitcoin? I mean, you have fallen into the camp, according to past comments, that there can be no blockchain without a Bitcoin. Some people say that they endorse blockchain but don't endorse Bitcoin. You don't believe that. So are you more in favor of a light touch right now?
So as a regulatory agency, our agency, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, has often been in the forefront of technological evolution. It's part of our DNA as an agency. We try to apply our statute on a principles-based approach. We look at the core principles and apply it to new innovations like this. And that's the approach we've taken in the case of Bitcoin futures. But all of us as regulators have to apply our statute in the spirit in which it was written, in the spirit it was conceived by Congress. At the end of the day, it's for Congress and not regulators to decide whether new policies should be evolved for these new asset classes. Jay Clayton from the SEC and I recently testified from the Senate Banking Committee, and we talked to Congress about whether maybe some new legislation might be appropriate in this area. And I think you will see going forward, perhaps in this Congress or in future Congress, an attempt to deal with this new innovation. But it is, I know Bitcoin has been in place since 8 or 9 years or so, but the fact of the matter is it still is relatively new for us at the regulatory agency, and it's going to take some new open-mindedness and some new way of thinking about it for us to get our heads around it.
Do you have confidence that Congress is going to come up with a framework, a regulatory framework, to govern this new emerging asset class and technology?
I think some will depend on the asset classes itself, how they develop. But I think there's certainly an appetite amongst a number of congressmen and women and senators that I've spoken to to approach this with some new eyes and some new thinking. And so I think there's a growing chorus on Capitol Hill for some rethinking here.
Right.
What we hear a lot of is people buying and holding. If you go on to the Twitter universe, you'll see a phrase HODL, which means hold on for dear life.
Nice.
And the thinking is that they buy it and hold it. In fact, I mentioned in my opening remarks my 30-year-old niece who bought Bitcoin years ago, and she's an HODL. She says, I'm going to own it. I don't know what's going to come of it, but I want to hang on to it. And she's not a fraudster or a manipulator. She's just a kid and believes in it. And, you know, I was fascinated talking to her. And I think she represents a lot of folks that think there's something in this, I want to hold on to it.